Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
As agencies figure out how to obligate funds before the fiscal year ends, the apportionment database offers a way to assess whether executive branch spending aligns with congressional intent. From impoundments to rescissions, it's a key tool for tracking compliance, transparency, and the balance of fiscal power. Here to explain how it all fits together is Program Integrity Fellow with Arnold Ventures, Doug Criscatello. Doug, thank you for joining me.
Great to be here, Terry.
Well, it is almost the end of September, and as a former OMBer, your mind turns toward end of year, budget execution, planning for 2026. What's your current take on all of the different conversations around federal resource management?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to be learned as we get to the end of fiscal year 25 on just precisely how funds that were appropriated by the Congress have been obligated and spent by the executive branch. There's quite a bit going on regarding obligating those funds. So I'm looking forward to getting to the end of the year and taking a look at how agencies have spent money once their books are closed. We're not going to know for a couple of months, but I'm hoping that everything that's being done right now is entirely consistent with the law that was put in place to fund the government for the current fiscal year.
One of the features of this whole federal budget and budget execution process is the apportionments and how OMB allocates money to federal agencies. There was a kerfluffle earlier this year when the Trump administration took down the apportionments database. Let me ask you to just set the stage for us there and talk about what apportionments are and what this database is first.
Apportionments are required in law by the Anti-Deficiency Act, which was originally put in place in 1870. So it's been around for a long time. And the intent of the apportionment requirement in the Anti-Deficiency Act is to limit the pace of spending, right? To allow the White House to manage that pace over the course of a fiscal year to ensure that funds are used efficiently and in line with congressional intent. And importantly, are allocated out to agencies or apportioned, I use those terms interchangeably, in a way where an agency isn't going to run out of money before it gets to the end of the year. I mean, that's sort of the key purpose of an apportionment. You want to, if you think about an agency that's funding its operations, you want to make sure it doesn't spend all of its money in the first half of the year, or it's going to have to terminate all of its employees and send them home for the second half, and citizens aren't going to be able to get their services. So that's really what apportionment is all about. The apportionments database was required a few years ago, I think in both the Omnibus Appropriations Act in 2022 and 2023, required OMB to post apportionment documents on a public website. And so OMB complied with that law until earlier this year. It was decided that a lot of the information sort of wasn't conducive to public disclosure, and OMB shut it down. But recently, in a court case, OMB was directed to reinstate the apportionment database website, so it's once again operational.
Why did it spark such a significant legal and political response when they took it down?
Well, it's really all about transparency, right? So I think requiring that apportionments be put online really serve as critical guardrails. They let the Congress and the public see how and when taxpayer dollars are being spent. So it ultimately is all about transparency. And I won't say it's just this. executive branch, but typically the executive branch of governments struggles at times with transparency, particularly when it relates to technical matters that can be misunderstood easily. And impoundments are technical and they can be misunderstood. So I understand some of the reticence on the part of OMB to not want to be terribly public about apportionments. But at the end of the day, it's the law. So OMB is once again doing it.
I'm speaking with Doug Criscatello. He's a program integrity fellow with Arnold Ventures. Well, Doug, now that the site is back up, and I know you've had a chance to look at it, what's your take? Is it complete? Are they posting everything they're supposed to?
Yeah, it's getting there. I was able to find everything I looked for. I didn't do a thorough review to see if every apportionment is up there. But yeah, it's chock full of information, not only for the current year. Some funds have already been apportioned for the coming fiscal year, but it's a worthwhile database to go look back over the last several years to compare how apportion levels have changed over time. But it's not terribly user-friendly. You have to know what you're looking for. I would think an average citizen would struggle trying to understand the information in that database. But I wanted to give a shout out to the Protect Democracy Project. They've developed a pretty nifty interface called openomb.org, where they've taken the data and they've managed to present it in a way that is more understandable than just the source data. But once again, it's designed, I think this database is of greatest use for oversight entities, congressional committees, academics doing research on government funding. But it's not something that I wouldn't think that members of the public would flock to this site to learn about their government.
You mentioned Protect Democracy. They and GAO both raised some concerns about potential gaps or omissions in the database, and you also linked it to oversight. So what should Congress and maybe GAO and others be looking for as they monitor this site's usage going forward?
They need to make sure that OMB is apportioning all funds that have been appropriated by the Congress. So apportionment is supposed to be a technical budgeting tool, not a political weapon. Its role is to spread funds evenly across the year so programs run smoothly and don't run out of money. But as we know from the Constitution, Congress controls the purse strings. OMB's job is to manage the timing of spending to some extent, but not to decide whether or not money that Congress provided should be spent at all. So, that's the single most important aspect of this database. We can identify whether funds that are mandated to be spent by the Congress have been apportioned to be ultimately spent by agencies.
Doug, when we began this conversation, you also talked about anti-deficiency, you talked about impoundments, you talked about rescissions. How does the nature of this conversation and action around the apportionments database maybe shed some light on how those other discussions may resolve?
Yeah, it's all intertwined, right? So budget execution, apportionments are required, continuous, smooth apportionments for the most part are required by the Anti-Deficiency Act. The Impoundment Control Act, the other power of the purse statute, along with the Anti-Deficiency Act, stipulates that the executive branch cannot withhold from expenditure funds that have been provided by the Congress. So if apportionment is misused, it can become an illegal impoundment, undermining Congress's constitutional spending power. So it's important to keep an eye on what OMB is doing. But the bottom line really is that OMB's apportionment authority is about budget discipline and accountability, not about canceling or impounding or delaying funds for political reasons. So to have this database online helps us keep an eye on whether OMB is fulfilling that limited responsibility.
I've been speaking with Doug Criscatello. He's a Program Integrity Fellow with Arnold Ventures. Doug, thanks so much for helping us understand this complicated space.
Thanks for having me, Terry. It's wonderful talking to you.
We'll post this interview and a link to Doug's article on federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Hear the Federal Drive on demand. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.